All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Night one of the 2024 NFL Draft is in the books, and me and Nick here are going to be giving our grade for each selection, all 32 teams, or all 32 picks, that is. And obviously the top two, former Heisman Trophy winners in Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Nick, obviously the Bears, a lot of controversy over, opting to get rid of Justin Fields to kind of reset the rookie contract window with a guy who's unproven, and Caleb Williams. There's no guarantee he's going to live up to the hype. A pluses for me on both picks. I think they did the right thing here. The Commanders, Sam Howell, he showed some flashes, but ultimately was just too turnover prone and didn't seem like he would elevate them to the level of maybe a player like Daniels. These are two really good quarterbacks. I know your grades are a little bit lower than mine, but overall I think that these two starters are probably going to end up being the best from this class.
I look at it and I gave a little lower of a grade just because I think the Bears should have tried to figure out a way to make Fields work. I think if you could have traded back from this first pick, you could have got a haul of picks. King's Ransom could have got a talented player as well and made it work. I think Fields is still a great quarterback. Could have figured out. I certainly understand resetting the contract, so this makes sense. But for me, if I was the GM in that situation, I would have traded back. That's why I give it an A instead of an A plus. I think it's a bit of a risk here. I think Fields obviously was not the most polished quarterback in the world, but he was a quarterback that had a high upside. I think could have made it work, and you could have really added another great mid, early to mid first round pick there, in addition to the pick they had at number 9, and would have been able to really beef up that roster. And as for Daniels, I'm not as impressed with him as I am with Drake May. I think Drake May could have fit the system a little bit better in Washington, but I understand why Washington made the pick. Obviously, he has high upside, and you saw the talent with him at LSU this past season where he really did torture some defenses. It could work out really well in DC. I just don't trust their system of developing quarterbacks. The last time they went with a quarterback that was more mobile in Robert Griffin III, it didn't work out so well for him. Obviously, injuries played a role in that. I think he could have gone with the pocket passer in May, and it could have worked out a lot better for them potentially, but this is interesting to see how it kind of plays out. All three of these quarterbacks are extremely talented.
And that's where there's a discrepancy here in number 3. I just think that Marvin Harrison should have been the pick for the Patriots. That's why I'm going to give the B plus to May. And I think he's a good player in terms of, he's got the intangibles. He's a player that has good size, great arm talent. Not a guy that really strikes me as a leader, though. Never really seemed to rise up in the biggest moments. Never really struck you as a clutch player. Again, in terms of leadership, what's he going to bring to the table? I mean, that's a hard ask right here. New England, this roster is kind of in disarray. As good as Belichick was, he really just seemed to just kind of play the F it mode, Nick, over the last couple of years when it comes to this roster. And they need pass catching help. This room is still not great. Obviously, they still need a quarterback, and I understand next year's class isn't all that impressive. So I still think it's a good pick overall. Harrison, I think, would have been the better one.
I go with A plus here because the quarterback class next year is that weak. I think the quarterback class next year really concerns me, and the Patriots are going to need a quarterback. They could have taken a wide receiver here, but I don't think the Patriots will be very good next year. They'll be picking high next year as well. They'll be able to get a good wide receiver at that point in time. I like Drake May a lot. I think he fits the system pretty well and can really work out with the new signal caller and new head coach there in Gerard Mayo. I think this makes a lot of sense for New England. Going to get an A plus for me, but certainly I could have seen them taking Marvin Harrison Jr., and that would have been an A plus for me as well.
Both of those wide receivers are getting A pluses. Harrison Jr. is going to be a great fantasy asset in year one. Going to be fun to watch him and Kyler Murray. The Giants, Nick, as a Giant fan, I know you're glad. And I'm glad as well they did not make the mistake of taking a quarterback. I thought that would have been a terrible decision. Neighbors is there. They make the right call here. And for a long time, it seemed like they were not going to do this. Neighbors, though, an incredibly explosive wide receiver, can win downfield. People even considered him to potentially be better than Harrison. So I think this is a phenomenal pick for the Giants. And then J.C. Latham, a bit of a reach here, but he is kind of a bulldozer, a nice mauler. What is he, like 340 pounds? I think the Titans, with getting Peter Skronsky last year, pretty good fit to kind of round up this offensive line.
Giants certainly dodged a bullet here at 6, in my opinion. J.J. McCarthy would have been a disaster. Giants are not contending anytime soon. This roster is awful, and having the quarterback issue they have with Daniel Jones, paying him a fortune already, adding another quarterback in the mix would just made this more of a headache, more of a dumpster fire. They get a talented wide receiver, finally a number 1 wide receiver for Jones to throw to. I think Neighbors has sky-high potential and really could work out well in New York. I like the 2 tackles here a lot. I think Latham's a bit of a reach at 7, which is why I get the B plus for me, but I think he has potential inside or outside as well. And, like you said, Skronsky is there from last year, beefing out that offensive line. I think the Titans just kind of got a bit unlucky because they wanted Neighbors or Alt, and both of them went right before. They were really counting on someone trading up and grabbing a quarterback. Alt, I like the pick a lot to the Chargers. Alt's the best tackle in the class. You plug him in, protect your golden goose and Justin Herbert. Makes a lot of sense for me.
Moving to picks 8 through 13, obviously number 8. Big controversy here. First, I want to touch on Rome Odunze. This seemed like the pick the entire time we did a mock. It was them getting Caleb at Rome. That's exactly what they did. fashion now, a good pass blocker. I'm glad that the Jets used wisdom here, didn't take the splashy option in Brock Bowers, and they considered the future and a guy who can certainly protect your passer. The Raiders, they didn't need a tight end, but Bowers is so good that it really doesn't matter. So this grade's certainly going to be high any way you look at it. Michael Penix going to the Falcons, Nick. Obviously, they just signed Kirk Cousins to a massive deal. And I said going into the draft season that I felt like they'd probably be the one to trade up for the number 1 overall pick because the team is that close. They ended up getting a quarterback anyways, a better one in Kirk Cousins, paying him a lot of money. This team's ready to compete now. They need to round out this defense, maybe add another weapon or two if they wanted to. And they opt to draft a quarterback who will be 29 years old when this contract of Kirk Cousins expires. This is not a Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love type of situation, Nick. This isn't, a guy who's potentially, on his way out. This is a guy who just signed a contract a month ago, Nick, and they're already looking for his replacement. I know his camp is not happy. This is an F any way you look at it. They could have had any of the top defenders on the board, and this is what they opt with. They said that Raheem Morris, he loved being around Penix, had a great meeting. That's great, Nick. I have a lot of great meetings with a lot of people. That doesn't mean I'm going to add him to my roster. Just not a good pick. F all across the board. Nothing to do with Michael Penix. I think he's a great player. I love watching him, a very nice guy. That needs to be clarified. Nothing here is against Penix, but this is not a guy who's probably going to play, bearing any setback of Cousins, of course, and this just is not a good pick for this franchise to make them better.
The only reason why I give this a C and not an F is because I do think Penix is a great player, and that if he does get on the field for Atlanta, he could be a difference maker and a game changer. But I am scratching my head at this a couple hours later. Penix has multiple injury concerns, 2 ACL tears in college, and on top of a shoulder injury and other issues he had at both Indiana and Washington. Sky high potential, but like you said, 23 years old already, not going to play till 29 years old potentially if Kirk Cousins lives out the lifespan of that contract. You could have grabbed the defender here. You really could have worked on this roster that I think is a very solid roster in what is probably the worst division in football in the NFC South. So you could have really found yourself competing immediately if you got a great defensive player. This makes zero sense at all. I really don't know what the Falcons were doing down there. It seems like Arthur Bank, the owner of the team, was speaking with the GM, was confused himself. There's a video circulating on social media of them discussing in the war room, seeming confused about what the pick was here. I don't really see the vision at all. I'm trying to play devil's advocate and give it a C to try and say, anything can happen. This could work out, but this just makes no sense to me.
At number 10, J.J. McCarthy, a guy that a lot of people probably don't consider a first-round prospect, a player that you're going to have to lean on a lot. Obviously, a lot of people like to talk about the scheme using at Michigan and whatnot. I mean, this is a good player. And we even said that when McCarthy becomes the starter, he's likely going to elevate Michigan to the next level. And that's exactly what he did. So I do want people to understand that thing is incredibly true. If they don't have him, they don't win a national championship. This is a player of great arm talent. And the thing is he is a talented player. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. But can he elevate an NFL team that doesn't have the same talent? Obviously, the supporting cast is pretty good. Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, offensive line's pretty solid. This is the best situation he could have ended up in. And for the Vikings, I probably should give this a higher grade because they didn't end up trading up at all. They still ended up having a very good night. So I do have it as a C. I'll probably end up bumping it up maybe to a B-. And he can probably sit and learn a year under Sam Darnold. So maybe this is not as bad as we're making it out to be, Nick. But McCarthy right now, I just don't think he's the guy who's going to elevate you to that next level. We could be wrong, though. But again, I do think this is the best option for him.
On second thoughts, this is a bit of a stronger grade. I give it a C+. I think, if they had traded up to, 5 and given up a haul of draft picks, I would have given it maybe a D or a C-. I do think this is the best fit for him. Like you said, he does kind of work well with that supporting cast of Justin Jefferson to throw to, as well as Jordan Addison, 2 great wide receivers for him to throw to. McCarthy, definitely an intriguing prospect. I didn't really love the hype if he was gone to the Giants at 6. I thought that was an absolute overdraft at 5. If they had traded up, it would have been an overdraft at 10. I think you slot in a little bit considering 6 quarterbacks went in his first 15 picks here, which is very rare. We've never seen that, obviously. I like McCarthy here to develop potentially. I think this could work out better than the other 2 quarterbacks here in Penix and Bo Nix.
Yeah, Nix, he was linked to the Broncos the entire time. Sean Payton, very happy with him. This is a prospect he really wanted. It seemed like they probably should have traded down to get him, but with how things were going, Nick, that really probably wasn't very safe, especially with the 2 guys behind him and the Raiders and the Saints. So Bo Nix, you give it a little bit of a C. I give it a B, just because I feel like for the value, it probably wasn't all that great. And I think he will probably be a quality starter. Will Bo Nix ever be great? I'm not really sure, but he's come a long way over the last couple of years, and momentum's on his side.
I gave it a C. I think it is an overdraft at 12, but you are correct, right? You don't never know what was going to happen with the Raiders and Saints right behind you, chomping at the bit for a quarterback as well. So I guess they had to make this move. I think it's just a slightly an overdraft here. I'm a little uncomfortable with that, especially with the way that the Raiders ended up getting Brock Bowers, which I give an A plus because I think it's incredible value at 13 to get a guy in a transcendent talent who I know is not really a need, but you can make it work. You can find a way to pencil him into your offense. And I think, Rome at 9 is a fantastic pick for the Bears. That roster has really turned themselves around overnight. They are serious Super Bowl contenders with the way that defense played. And the Jets, they went with Fashanu. You could have gone with Bowers. The New York media market would have loved Bowers. A lot of my friends who are Jets fans wanted Bowers, but you get a steady tackle there in Fashanu who can be a good, really solid player. Obviously has to polish out some of his game, but overall I think protecting Aaron Rodgers is a key thing to do, and you get a great tackle to do so.
Looking at picks 14 through 19. Absolutely love Taliese Fuaga. This was great for the Saints. A guy who can be versatile. He's a strong mauler, nice run blocker there. Nice addition to their offensive line. See a bit of a run on defenders here. Obviously, some guys that we love. Jared Verse, Dallas Turner falling all the way to 17. That's pretty good value for them. Costed them some picks for next year when they made that trade with Jacksonville. Byron Murphy felt like, when we made our last mock, Nick, I was like, the Seahawks could probably go with Murphy if he's there. Mike McDonald, I think, would love, a great uphill rusher on the interior. Exactly what they got. I've seen some people give him Latu to the Colts an A+, and I think Latu is a phenomenal player, crafty pass rusher. But they really needed a cornerback, Nick, and this would have been a great chance to take one, and they ended up going with him instead. I think that certainly gives them a great defensive line still. But they needed to fill another need here, and they opted not to.
I think that's kind of an interesting pick, Latu. I think he's a really talented player, but the injury concerns worry me. Obviously, ESPN made a whole deal about that. They talked about it, but it is a serious issue, is that you worry about what could happen with him. The Colts obviously had Andrew Luck retire early and really put an end to what that was. Promising start there. I give it a B-. I think they could have gone with a cornerback. I think they could have got Mitchell or Wiggins or somebody else there at 15. It would have been a great pick. They do work on the defense. I think that makes a lot of sense. Byron Murphy, though, to the Seahawks. I love that pick. A for me, easily. Murphy, a great player. Fuaga as well. Works for the Saints. You plug him in the offensive line, flexible guy. You can move him around. Dallas Turner, I only give it an A- because you give up capital to get him. I think they might have been able to wait and get him where they were. I do love Dallas Turner a lot. He does need to find that second move to really kind of complement him and complete him as a player. But he's a guy that I've been a fan of since day one in Alabama when he came in as a high school recruit. I knew he was going to be the next guy up. I loved him since day one, and I'm really excited to see him get drafted here at 17th overall.
Of course, Amarius Mims, 18. We expected the Bengals to go offensive tackle. Mims, though, I feel like he probably could have went in the second round. This is a guy who's really just, a high upside player. Doesn't have that much experience playing at Georgia. Formidable pass blocker, better run blocker at this moment in time. And it just comes to his intangibles and fundamentals need improvement. Strength, the leverage, all needs improvement. C+ for me. Obviously, I think the Bengals probably could have traded back if they wanted a player like this. Am I making too much of a big deal out of it, though, Nick?
I give it a B just because I do need to fill the position, but I agree with you. They could have traded back and got a different tackle, or they could have got Mims they wanted to. Mims really slid down during the draft process. I was unimpressed with him across the board. Inexperienced, didn't play a whole lot at Georgia. Probably should return to school for one more season. Didn't end up doing that. At 18, I give it a B, and maybe you give it a C+ like you did. I think it is just a bit of an overdraft. They do need tackle help, and it makes sense, but I think they could have traded down and potentially grabbed a different tackle here. Kind of a weird move for here. We'll see how this one works out in 3 to 5 years and get a better read on it.
The Rams settling on Jared Verse. They need a playmaker to replace Aaron Donald up front, and he's probably going to do that easily. 20 through 25, the Steelers, they end up landing Troy Fautanu, a guy who's probably going to slot in at guard. Chop Robinson, a high upside player. Bit of a reach, but I think this is going to be a great player. B+ for me, but he's an athletic specimen who probably won't be an impact contributor right away, but I think overall he's going to be good. A+ is for me on 22 and 24, really just because these two corners fell to them. Crazy I'm going to grade someone that high when all they did was just sit there and did nothing. Nick just waited for other teams to pass on these players. But these are guys that everyone considered locks to be in the top 15 for most of the draft season. The Lions, the proactiveness, they needed a corner. Them getting Arnold was not on my bingo card. The Eagles getting Mitchell wasn't even on it, Nick. So I think this is highly impressive. Eagles staying packed, making the right pick. The Lions making that move up a couple of slots. A+ for me on both of those corners.
I like the move a lot here for the Eagles to get him at 22. Mitchell, the best cornerback in this class. The Eagles definitely need to add a cornerback considering their tackling woes at the end of last season. They get the best one there at 22. Don't have to move or do anything to do it. Makes a lot of sense for me. Terry on Arnold, second best corner in this class. You plug him into that defense that already had some familiar faces in Brian Branch. I think that makes a lot of sense. They needed some help there. We had them, getting different corners later in the pick here. They move up here and grab a guy in Arnold. I think really makes a lot of sense for this team. This could really work out well for these two teams. Get the home crowd excited. That was a great crowd they had tonight in Detroit, a really packed out house at that, makeshift theater. They get a great player at 24. Arnold is certainly an exciting guy to add for this Lions defense.
Mitchell, a guy with great ball skills. Arnold, high IQ football player. The Jaguars moved back. They picked up 3 selections in that trade with the Vikings, landed the guy they wanted, and Brian Thomas Jr. to be a vertical threat for them. And then Jordan Morgan, the Packers have a lot of picks, and they get things started with a versatile offensive lineman. Out of these 5 picks, which one's your favorite, Nick? You probably haven't discussed already.
I love Brian Thomas a lot to the Jaguars. I think this is a great fit for them. They could have gone corner here, beefed up that defense, but I think they have an opportunity to do so later in the second or third round. At this point in time, they had a guy in Brian Thomas who's a really talented wide receiver, that number 1 wide receiver in this second class of wide receivers, because you have your top class with Neighbors, Odunze, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Now you have your second kind of grouping of wide receivers, and I put Thomas at the top of that grouping. Give Trevor Lawrence some weapons, give him people to throw to. Brian Thomas, I think that's a perfect player to throw to. Chop Robinson, a bit of a reach at 21, but a guy of high upside, nice motor. Again, kind of like Turner needs to find that second move to use in the pros, but still, the film is good at Penn State. I like him a lot. Fatanu to the Steelers. They need some offensive line help. They plug in a guy, kick him around. I like that a lot. Jordan Morgan, I do question this move. I think they could have potentially traded down and got Morgan. I feel like it's a bit of an overdraft. The Packers, though, they're kind of in a weird spot where they're just seem to be really average at a lot of different positions and don't really need to have a lot of needs, in my opinion. They're just kind of a team that's looking to get that next level of hoping guys step up. And they have a ton of picks this year. So going at 25, you kind of could have done really anything here. I just don't particularly love Morgan as a prospect. That's why I give it a tougher grade.
And looking at the final picks of the first round, Graham Barton, it looks like they're going to move him to center. They obviously needed interior offensive line help, but I don't think, a lot of teams are happy with how things played out. The run on edge rushers all of a sudden out of nowhere, I think, kind of upsets Tampa Bay. Arizona, I didn't expect them to go Darius Robinson here. I thought corner was going to be the pick. This is a player, though, they can put inside, play as an edge. I mean, a complete football player. This guy is absolutely ripped. And obviously, this is a pick that a lot of people mock, Nick. It wasn't just us. Give it an A+. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. We're not going to sit here and bang on the table saying, well, we got this one right. It was pretty clear that this guy who broke the combine record for speed was going to be Tyreek Hill's replacement. Great pick by the Chiefs. They move up with the Bills, and obviously the Bills, we don't really know what they're doing. They don't really seem to care. It's going to work out for Buffalo, I promise, but right now it does look very silly what they just did. Yeah,
the Bills don't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. They traded twice out of the first round, acquiring, 5th-round draft picks. When they need a wide receiver, they could have taken Worthy, they could have taken Leggett. I guess they must really love a guy they're going to get tomorrow with that 33rd pick. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The Bills really seem to be kind of running in circles up there. They've been needing to make different moves. You really thought they were going to take a wide receiver here, and there's a decent amount of solid, talented wide receivers right here. Instead, they trade back with their biggest rival in the AFC, the team that's beaten them in the playoffs over and over again, and give them another weapon to beat them. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I really don't get what the Chiefs or what the Bills are doing. Barton at center, I like him. I think kick him in there. Center, high production rate out of draft picks in the NFL. I think Mel Kiper was saying it's the highest production rate of players drafted in the first round. Barton could really be successful there. I like the film for him at Duke. Darius Robinson, I'm very high on him. Very polished player. He can move around, play him basically anywhere on the defensive side of the ball. And the Cardinals, that defense showed some improvement last year. Now you get a guy that's a nice weapon, move him around. Makes a lot of sense to me at 27.
And looking at the final 3 picks, Nate Wiggins. Every year, Nick, I say it, the Ravens just make the selection. Nobody else wants to. A+ here. You see him with Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum. Nobody else drafts them. Falls right to them. They make the easy selection, and that's why their roster is so good. They do it again, picking up what a lot of people thought was the best corner in this class. 31, Ricky Pearsall. Maybe this grade's a little bit too low now I think about it, because this is a versatile player who has some nice speed, great hands. Probably going to fit into the scheme very well. Just not really sure what the vision is at wide receiver right now. They have 2 good players that are, obviously going to be due a lot of money. And, this is a roster that's constructed off their top players getting paid a lot, and the rest of these guys aren't making very much. And that's not going to be something they can do for a long time, I don't think. Some of these guys they have, the younger cats, are going to have to get re-signed. So I understand what they're doing right now. Kind of strange, though, Ayuk didn't get traded tonight. Look at 32 for the Panthers. Good for them. It costed them pretty much nothing to move up one spot and lock in the guy they wanted, keeping him in the state. In nearby state. Leggett, athletic specimen, love his hands as well. Leaping ability checks out. What do you make of these final 3 picks here, Nick? 2 Super Bowl contenders and then one that's aspiring to get better.
It's a very interesting kind of run here. I think Nate Wiggins to the Ravens, incredible pick, right? The Ravens always seem to find a way to get a player that no one wants. That's super talented. Wiggins is going to turn into an absolute star in Baltimore, I have no doubt. Tyler Guyton to the Cowboys. I like that pick. They kind of made a nice move there, traded down, got some capital, got Guyton. I really thought Guyton would be available in the second round. I was hoping the Giants could get him in the second round. I really do like him. I think he's an underrated prospect. The Cowboys must see what I see in him because I think he's a fantastic tackle. That's very versatile, solid from Oklahoma. Ricky Pearsall to the 49ers, I give it B- as well because I don't really know what the vision here is. I know they're potentially trading one of their top wide receivers, and there's a lot of question marks with the money, like you said. I think they could have gone corner here. There's still some talented corners available. They could have beefed up that position group. The trade hasn't happened. Is it going to happen? I don't really know if this is the right move here for the 49ers. And I think the Panthers, they made a great move there, right? Like you said, give up really not that much at all. I think it was a fifth-round pick to move up one spot to get their guy in Xavier Legette, who's a fantastic player out of South Carolina, had an incredible season. Keep him in that Carolinas region, a guy that Bryce Young can throw to, a really talented player. The Bills, though, I really just don't get this at all. I'm really puzzled what the Bills are doing here. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But the Panthers, they had a nice player here, and they finally get themselves on the board after sitting out the entire first round, thanks to trading that pick last year to the Bears.
And I think the grades would be higher for those two pass catchers if A.D. Mitchell wasn't a player that they decided to pass over. It's going to be it for today's episode. Nick, we got a great weekend on tap. Some great players still available for day two. Cooper DeJean, Johnny Newton, Kool-Aid, the aforementioned A.D. Mitchell. The list goes on. Guys like Peyton Wilson, Edgar and Cooper. A lot of great players that not got picked higher on day one. I think it's going to be a great day two for a lot of these teams.
Incredible day two on tap. I think if the Bills can get A.D. Mitchell, then that kind of covers all the woes that they really had tonight, in my opinion. Some talented players, the two linebackers you talked about, Cooper and Wilson. Where do they fall? Those are two talented players that the position's kind of losing some value. The cornerbacks, there's some still solid, some players there. Max Melton out of Rutgers, a guy that I really like, could be impactful. Cooper DeJean, where is he going to fall? Tyler Nubbin, a safety. We had him as a first-round prospect potentially. Where does he fall? I'm excited for this early second round tomorrow.
Certainly expected at least three of these corners not to be on the board after the conclusion of night one. So, it happens every year where guys fall when they probably shouldn't. Makes, a lot more excitement added to the fold, though. Appreciate you joining me, Nick. See you the rest of this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait for round 2 and 3 tomorrow night.